Hey, good morning, and thanks for joining us on fox16.com and krk.com, as well as our Facebook pages for our Victory Over Violence special. My name is Ashley King, and I'm going to go ahead and bring in now my co-host, Mr. Robert Holtz. How are you doing today, Robert?
Hey, I'm doing great. I love the music. You had a little music going on in there,
You
you
want me to keep
know?
playing it? I don't know
Well,
how.
I kind of thought I'd get a little, I thought I'd get my little jig going there,
Yeah.
and so yeah, I know. I'm great. How are you?
Good, doing well, doing well. Can't complain for
You're
right now.
looking awfully beautiful in your blue today.
Thank you. Thank you very
Yeah,
much. I picked it out
yeah. One
last
of these
minute.
days, one of these days, I might get as beautiful as you. So
One day, right?
one day,
We'll
right? One
see.
day.
All right,
Yeah.
so we have some things in the works that we want to talk about today.
Yes, yes.
All right.
Of course, before we go to our incredible, wonderful, beautiful guest today, right now, Channel 4, Channel 16, Love, Boys and Girls Clubs, Our House, we're working on a great plan to bring the community together, and that is our Victory Gardens of Love.
Yes.
So we are going to be placing community gardens in the various Boys and Girls Clubs and at Our House. And in order to not only help those that are in those locations, but to help people from the community come and help them work in the community gardens and develop, their plants and vegetables and all sorts of fun things. But more importantly, try to develop even stronger community and building community.
Yeah. So, because we all know, especially with a garden, it gives you access to food, and
Yes,
sometimes people don't realize that food is a connection to violence as well.
that's right.
Having access to food.
Woo, isn't that the truth? A lot of times people that don't have access to food, unfortunately, they have to do something in order to get food. And so this, we hope, will be just one small step in order to help create sustainable food source, sustainable unity in the community, if you allow me to use that,
Yeah.
Sustainable building a community. And, it's just a start. But, Ashley and myself and others have said, Victory Over Violence is going to be more than just marching. We're going to be out there trying to engage the community and building community.
Yep, that's right. And so we know, like we said, it's a violence is a, I guess, multifaceted issue. There's a lot of things that go into it. And so
Right.
we are trying to be that solution. We're trying to find solutions. And one of the solutions is a topic we're going to talk about today, which is domestic violence. And so
Yes.
I'm going to go ahead and bring in our guest for today now, Miss Angela McGraw, the Executive Director of Women and Children First. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you for the invitation.
Yes, all right. So first of all, just tell me a little bit about why domestic violence is something that is near and dear to your heart, and curbing it, I guess I should say.
Well, for me personally, I'm a survivor of domestic violence, and so I definitely didn't grow up saying that I wanted to be a domestic violence advocate someday when I grew up. It just doesn't happen that way. But I found myself in a bad relationship. Became homeless because of that relationship, ended up in a shelter, not the one that I'm at right now, but a shelter, and it saved my life. I had little girls at the time, and I had to figure out a way to break that cycle in our family. And I would like to think that we have been able to do that. But that's kind of how I got to where I am now. And of course, there's a lot of other things that go along with that. And Women and Children First just happens to be kind of my home. I started when I moved here to Little Rock in 2001. I started working there, and I left after about 5 years, and then I came back in 2013. So here I am again.
Yeah. So I do want to let people know we have this on our Facebook page, the Fox 16 Facebook page, the KRK Facebook page. So we do want this to be interactive. So go on there, go ahead and share your comments if you have any questions, and we'll get to some of those later on throughout the show. So Robert.
Yeah, so if there's somebody that's watching right now and you're involved in any type of domestic violence relationship, unfortunately, and we are praying for you. Angela, would you go ahead and give them a number that they could maybe call
Oh,
at this? Yeah.
definitely. And we have our hotline. It's a 24-hour hotline, and there's always somebody available there. And we actually have two ways of getting a hold of us because we realize, especially during COVID, not everybody has access to making a phone call. But if you do and are able, you can call 501-376-3219. That is our hotline number. And you can also get on our chat or send an email to us through our website, which is wcfarkansas.org.
And throughout this show, I'm probably, myself or Ashley will be asking you, hey, repeat that number again. And because as soon as we're able to really get into the new studio, hopefully in the near future, we'll be able to put that on the screen and those types of things. But we'll ask you to repeat it. You mentioned earlier about breaking the cycle. How difficult was it for you to break that cycle?
Oh, yeah. So, on an average, it takes victims 7 times to actually leave a domestic violence situation. And that's on average. And so, like, for me, it took 2 times to finally get out of that situation. And I know a woman that it took 44 times.
Wow.
And so you can sometimes understand why people would get discouraged with those of us who maybe are not able to get out of that situation faster than people would like us to. But for me, it was the people, my support system that was able to help me first educate me that I was even in a domestic violence situation. Because I was young, and I promise nobody came to our school and said, this is what dating violence looks like. This is what domestic violence is. And this is a shelter, and they house people that need help. People did not do that,
Yeah.
So it was the people around me that started educating me about that and letting me know that, hey, what he's doing is not cool. And they started making me feel really good about myself. Like, you're worthy of not being, being hit or, being hurt. So, all of those types of things, those were all instrumental in me making the decision to finally leave. But I will tell you that most every woman that I've ever worked with, they have their moment. And I would say any victim, but, where they've just kind of hit rock bottom. And my rock bottom moment was when one of my good friends I went to high school with, her husband actually walked into their mobile home, and he shot all 3 of her little girls. And then he shot my friend and turned the gun on himself. And, they were all under the age of 5. I had just seen them a couple weeks prior to that. And, I think up until then, it was kind of like all about me. Like, this is happening to me. So I'm, I can handle this, and I'm staying for my girls and all of this. But when that happened, it was like this moment that was like, my girls didn't ask to be put in this situation. I have to do whatever I can to save them and make sure that this doesn't happen to them. I didn't want to be that other statistic, And so it was breaking the cycle, doing whatever it took.
So you mentioned that you didn't know that you were even in an abusive relationship. So what are some warning signs? If you're in that relationship and you have no idea, what is something that you can look for yourself?
Yeah, I think that the most, the one that we often don't talk about, and the one that's the hardest, the one that when I go to be an expert witness in court, is the mental and emotional abuse that happens. And I think that sometimes we just kind of put it to the side because people can't see it, so they don't want to call it out, but we hear it because we're called out of our name. There's, a lot of times hurting people or things that are around us. They're isolating us from the people that we love. There's a lot of jealousy that's taking place. And it's all happening really quick. So like at the beginning of a relationship, what it's masked by is true love. Like, I love you so much that I just want to make sure that you got to this location. Okay, so just give me a call when you get there, or it's I don't want you hanging around with those friends anymore because those friends, they're always telling you things about me. They're always trying to make you do something that you don't need to be doing, and they're bad for you, And your mom's always talking down to me, she's always saying to you that you need to get out of this relationship. But really what's happening is the people around you are educating you, but they're telling you I love you so much that if they loved you, they wouldn't be telling you to leave the relationship. They would want you to stay in it.
Mhm.
That's quick involvement, and it happens really quickly, and those are red flags that we need to be looking for. It's not I can't tell you how many times people think that when you come to a domestic violence shelter, all you're going to see is people with broken bones and black and blue eyes, but I can just tell you that we almost never have anybody that comes in there that's like that. It's definitely the emotional abuse.
Mhm.
You know, when we go and talk to groups about kids and gangs and drugs and those types of things, one of the things we always say is that a lot of times it always starts with a Snicker bar. And what we mean by that is they'll just go in the store and think they can get away with stealing a Snicker bar. And then the next thing it keeps building and building and building. So what I'm hearing you say that it possibly could start with just that one verbal, one emotional, one mental type abuse, and they've gotten away with it, and they continue on, and it continues to escalate.
Yeah. And I would definitely say that we see that same thing taking place in domestic violence, where there's just that continued escalation that happens, and I think that at the beginning we just don't. It's just always said that it's something else. It's just kind of minimized about what the situation is really. I think that it's something that is easy for even victims to be like, I really shouldn't have done that. I should have, made sure that supper was made, or I should have made sure that the kids were, in bed, those types of things.
Mm. Are there
So,
shelters all over the state?
Yeah, so I interestingly sit, not interestingly, I'm very excited about the fact that I sit on the Arkansas Coalition Against Domestic Violence Board of Directors. We have 33 shelters around the state of Arkansas who are members of the Arkansas Coalition Against Domestic Violence. And so when we all have to be able to be a member of the coalition, there's standards that we have to uphold, where all of the staff, they go through training so that they have a number of hours, and that they have to be certified to be an advocate and to provide direct service hours. All of us have 24-hour hotlines, and we all have 24-hour domestic violence shelters, emergency shelters. So, I mean, there might not be one right in your county. We have a few counties that we don't have a shelter in, but there's not one far away. And most of the time, law enforcement are definitely willing to transport victims and their children to those shelters if needed.
so if you are trying to get out, how do you do that? Do you have to make a plan, or you just up and leave one day? How do you do that?
I think what's really interesting about that question, Ashley, is that a lot of people have been asking me during COVID, like, what's been going on? What's the difference?
Mhm.
Because I'm going to tell you, most of the shelters, and I can definitely tell you, like, the domestic violence shelters have been pretty much at half capacity to provide isolation, that's not the word, but social distancing, and so in order to do that, a lot of us have been at half capacity. So how are we being able to help those that are giving us a call and stuff, but what has been interesting at the beginning of all this stuff with COVID, we wasn't getting the phone calls like we normally get. In fact, our numbers were down a lot. I got to tell you, I have never been at our shelter where our numbers have gotten down to 2 to 3 people. And we literally have been down to 2 people in the shelter at one time. And it didn't last very long, but that was the case. So people weren't being able to make those phone calls. That's the reason why we started our chat room, was so that maybe people were able to use their phones to be able to do that. And so I would say what has kind of been inspiring to me is that when people have been making the decision to leave, it's like they've been processing it, and they've been coming up with that plan of action. And so, like, when they're making the decision to leave, they are leaving. Like, this is it. And I say that because even though our shelter numbers have been down significantly, we actually had 173 people who actually transitioned into our transitional housing program. That just shows and tells me that people are actually probably having to stay in the domestic violence relationship while they're processing and coming up with a plan of action. But when they're coming up with that plan, they're ready. They're ready to get out of that relationship, and they're ready to break that cycle.
Yeah.
And not that that's exciting, But I have to tell you, it's extremely inspiring.
Oh, I'm sure it is. So again, to our viewers, if you're just now joining us on fox16.com or krk.com, as well as our Facebook pages, we are talking about ways to curb domestic violence. And we have Angela McGraw here with Women and Children First. And so let's remind people the number. If they need some help, what number can they call again?
They can call 501-376-3219, or they can go to our chat or website, which also has an email attached to it, which is WCF, that's Frank, MF, Arkansas.org.
Okay. And so you mentioned the pandemic a little while ago. So how has the pandemic impacted domestic violence when it comes to like statistics and cases?
Yeah, so I would say that's very scary, and we're at the very upfront numbers of that. In fact, I would say that we're probably not even far enough into it yet to know exactly what the stats are. We do know that from other countries who have been, dealing with the pandemic maybe a little bit longer, that we're seeing some severe cases of domestic violence that have happened. And once we start lifting, the more and more that we start lifting some of the restrictions, we're seeing more and more domestic violence. I would also say I'm seeing, and I think that this is kind of nationally, I've heard this and read this a lot, we're seeing a lot more severe cases. Again, I think that that's really directly related to the fact, like, by the time they really make the decision to leave, it's gotten really bad. And so I've seen more people who've come in with a broken hip. I mean, we've seen some severe things that have happened even during the beginning of the pandemic.
You mentioned earlier about dating violence. Are you aware of cases even going up during this time with COVID as far as dating violence, the anger that's happening, the stress, the frustrations, all of those things? Are we seeing dating violence going up? And also, if I may, are there signs to look for even in dating violence?
Yeah, so I would also say that that's scary because a lot of our kids, we haven't had access to them the way that maybe we would have prior to the pandemic. People have been able to make the decision to, virtually go to school, or all of those things. And one of the red flags that we see in dating violence is not going to school, truancy, skipping school and stuff. We're in this situation a lot of time right now. We don't know whether or not that's the case or not. Are they skipping because of the dating violence or that's happening or not? I would also say that dating violence looks a lot like domestic violence. We usually say that bullying is the cousin to dating violence, and dating violence is the sibling to domestic violence. And so, I mean, I would truly say that it's probably got a lot of the same red flags. But I would also say that young people can say that's not happening, and then we start mentioning different things like, have they ever slammed the locker, because they were mad at you? Or have they ever stood at the window of your classroom to see who you were talking to? Because, they get mad if you're talking to another person of the opposite gender. And it's really interesting because almost every time young people will say that they know somebody or themselves have been in that situation. Now, I'm not saying that every relationship or whatever is an emotionally abusive relationship, or, it's got some type of violence happening. But if you've got a number of the red flags that I've mentioned, you're probably in an unhealthy relationship, and you should probably think about talking to somebody about that and seeing if there's something that needs to happen that's maybe different, or come up with a plan of some sort.
Mm-hmm. And so as we talk about solutions, what are some ways that we can maybe reduce some of this domestic violence that's going on?
Well, I will, just to kind of go back to what Robert had asked. I do think that some of the effects of dating violence, first of all, I don't want to just say it's because of the pandemic, because it's not, of dating violence, is we see a lot of kids who come out of homes where there's domestic violence, or their environment is domestic violence. We see a lot of angry teenagers. I mean, our age groups deal with it differently. And so like a young child, a toddler, for instance, might revert back to bedwetting and sucking their thumb and those types of things. Where a teenager, they're just angry. Sometimes they're angry because it's not only women are in domestic violence situations, so I'm not going to just say that. But for an example, mom is getting the crap beat out of her, and so, I mean, mom's not leaving this person, so they're stinking mad at the fact that mom's not leaving, you know. And so, where does that go at that point? Does that go to my partner? You know that you're kind of being a bully to your partner, but it's actually ends up being dating violence. So I would say that the other thing about the dating violence is that who are they supposed to go to? Like for instance, we have some advocates, they're children's advocates at the shelter, but at the end of the day, I can't tell a young teenager, hey, you can come to the shelter, because you have to be 18 years or older unless you're accompanied by a guardian to come to the shelter. And so what resources do they have, you know, to be able to help them? I mean, we have a lot of programs in the Central Arkansas area, but it's finding those programs to help them.
I understand that you're going to be possibly doing Camp Hope.
Oh yeah. And so I was going to mention that. I wanted to make sure that I was able to get that in there, because that is one of the ways that we're able to break the cycle. But even beyond that, I think it's just a safe place for young people to just be themselves. And I really love the phrase of our past doesn't define our future. And that's what we teach at Camp Hope America, Arkansas. It's an evidence-based national camp, that there's only one kind. It's all by itself. I mean, there's no other camp like it, because it really allows young people to come and be free of any domestic violence or sexual violence or child abuse. They get out of that environment if they're still in it, but even if they're out of it, still just go and be a kid. With just nothing holding on to them. It's like one of the most exciting things that we do, because you get to see kids' faces. And I can't tell you how at the very beginning of Camp Hope, I'll see some really angry and very frustrated and very just worn out kids. To the end date, they just like don't want to leave, and you just seen like a kid who might have been playing the parent role for so long. By the time they leave, they're a kid again. I mean, it is just like most incredible thing in the world. And so we actually, last year we had to go all virtual, which made it really difficult to do Camp Hope. I'll be honest. I mean, the whole purpose of it is for us to be able to be there, support them, embrace them, you know, and their ideas. And so this year, what we're going to do, we're probably going to go half and half virtual, and then have a day where we actually spend a day with them and, you know, have barbecues and those types of things. So having a good time. We partner with Camp Aldersgate for our young people from the ages of 7 to 11. And then 12 to 17 years of age, we partner with the 4-H.
Okay. When are you guys planning to have it?
Yeah, so in 2 different times, we always had the young group, the 7 to 11, which we just last year started doing the older group. So the 7 to 11 will be the week of 4th of July. And then the other group, I'm not sure that we have the definite time on that. It's going to really depend a lot on the availability of the 4-H. And so there's been, you know, since we went virtual, we've had to kind of play a lot of things by just by the day, it seems like.
Well, I wanted to bring that up because I wanted Ashley to hear about it, because I know her heart and is definitely for our children in our community. And so she, you know, Ashley, I know that, you know, you're going to, it's going to be one of those things, but I get to be a part of Camp Hope this year, and I'm excited. And your young lady, Angela, has already reached out to us. And so I'm so looking forward to really, you know, really doing all we can, you know, to assist Camp Hope.
Yeah,
there's so much. There's so much that people can do. You can be our mentors or like our counselors. They have to be the ages of 18 to 24 because they have to be peers. We have a really hard time sometimes getting people from that age group, because a lot of times your college age students and stuff like they're going back home. But there's a lot of people in Little Rock that are college students coming back home.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they could be our counselors too. And so we need counselors. There's a lot of different things we need. And so all you really have to do is either get a hold of Audrey at the shelter, or you can go on our website. We have tons of information on our website and Facebook page dealing with Campo.
So you need mentors.
Absolutely need mentors. Yeah.
That's music to mine and Ashley's ear. Right
Everything
there.
goes back to
Yeah.
mentors, I feel like.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
They
You know,
need they need to see healthy behaviors. A lot of times people also think that domestic violence or dating violence is a women or girls thing. It's absolutely not. We love having men come to the shelter, or even young guys that help volunteer and stuff. Because our young kids just like navigate and hold on to a positive healthy behavior in coming from a male. And so we like having law enforcement and our male, supporters come in and be with us.
Yeah. Let's see. So another thing we wanted to talk about was the Peace Center.
Yeah, so for years and years now, I have known about the Alliance for Hope International, which is out of San Diego, and they developed a model that is now evidence-based, and it's backed by the Department of Justice, which actually has funding set aside for these. Most of them worldwide, and I say worldwide because we're all over the place now, they're called family justice centers. Until they moved to developing one in Milwaukee and Wisconsin, where they asked the victims and survivors, like, do you like that name, the Family Justice Center? And they really didn't like the word justice. And so one of the things that they did was change that middle word to Family Peace Center. And so we've kind of adopted that same thought process. Of course, unless our survivors decide they want to change it to something else, they'll have that opportunity. We're in the very beginning stages of that. We had a forum that happened with all of our partners around the central Arkansas area last August. And out of that was a report that was gathered that gave us recommendations on how we could proceed, or what they would suggest that they would see us like to see us do. And so out of that was a steering committee that Robert is joined on with. Our kind of our chair of the steering committee is Jennifer Long with the CAC here in Little Rock. And then there's just a number of other people that are from all different partnerships. The Family Peace Center is it's a whole bunch of agencies. It's a multi group of people that come underneath one roof to provide services for victims of domestic violence and sexual violence. And I'm going to tell you the reason why that's so significant. So I give this small example of when you go into a courthouse, to our courthouse, to file an order of protection. Pre-COVID, you had to go to 6 locations in the courthouse to be able to get your order of protection to the place that it was going to be served. Now, that's just an order of protection. And I don't know about you, but as a survivor, it's daunting to think that I have to walk through the courthouse, first go through the metal detector, get to the court advocate, which is our court advocate that's located there, and then go through that whole entire process.
Yeah.
Now, I would say if one of those people are not very nice, or the court advocate isn't there, or maybe just being terrified of being at the courthouse. I've been in a lot of courtrooms. I'm still terrified to be an expert witness in them. I'm just telling you. So can you imagine being a victim, being in that situation? So what a Family Peace Center does is it says that, like, when you walk in that door, that you're going to be greeted immediately with a welcoming and loving attitude. And there are people there that are going to support you. They're going to provide you resources, but they're going to do it all right there. Yeah. And so you really shouldn't have to leave to be able to get any services, because they should be taken care of. And we're also, hoping that we're in the beginning stages of also a capital campaign where we'll have the domestic violence shelter attached to it.
Cool. So real quick, you kind of touched on a question we actually got on Facebook. Someone asked that, what about when a man uses shared custody of the children to stay in contact with the woman who they are supposedly abusing? So do you have any advice for that?
Yeah, I wish that I could just say to you that I have the magic wand and I can help you with that. I will tell you, years and years ago, we used to be confidently able to say that when you're in a situation like that, that it's for the person, you know, that's victimized. I mean, it just happens to be that, and back then we didn't have much stats when it came to males, so we confidently would say women. It's the Arkansas kind of, you know. Was heavy on sending the kids to the mom. You know, it was just kind of, they're going to go to you, until that didn't happen no more. And one of the cases that I was involved with that actually almost got out of this field was one of those types of cases. And I'm going to tell you that it's not gotten any better. Some of the cases that I'm working with right now are for that purpose right there, is the whole situation of the court, shared custody, child abuse reports being made, all being used as a tactic of power and control over the person in that situation. All I can suggest to you is to find a good advocate to help you walk through that process. And it could take a lot of time, and it's already going to take patience that you've already had to endure horribly this entire time. But if you're not doing it by yourself,
yeah, they can call you, right? They can call you to get information on the advocate.
Yeah, we definitely have advocates that'll be able to do that. I usually only try to, you know, have a couple at a time because the cases can be really difficult, but I have a large staff, and I know that myself, along with Dorcas House, I mean, there's a lot of us that are still out here that are advocating that can help, you know, walk through that process. I'm not going to say that it's going to end as a win-win, because I just can't promise that anymore.
Yeah.
But one thing about it is you won't have to go through it by yourself.
Yeah, definitely. Again, all right, so we're coming up on the end of our time here, but so I do want to remind everybody again, how can they get help?
Well, you can definitely call our 24-hour hotline, which somebody's available there 365 days a year, always there. And that number is 501-376-3219. And if you're not able to use that, you can certainly go to our website. We have a chat room that's live, as well as an email that you can use. And that is www.wcf, F as in Frank, arkansas.org.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much, Angela, for being here and just, you know, giving us some advice, and hopefully this reached somebody, touched somebody, and hopefully it'll do a lot of good.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation again, and that's what my hope is too.
So there is something though that we need you, Angela, to do with Ashley and I, and Ashley and I have come up with there is victory with love. You know, and because that's what we need. We need love. So there's victory with love. So we want to close out our show with all of us, you know, on the count of three, we'll say there's victory with love. And we're going to keep saying that. So 1, 2, 3. Right. There's victory
with love. Yep, there sure is. All right. Well, thank you so much. And we're glad you guys could all join us, and hope you guys do have a good day. And remember, there is victory with love.